Cannibal at Lagoon was on my bucket list for the longest time. I mean, just look at clips of this ride. It looks absolutely insane. It's a very intimidating structure, and as a seasoned roller coaster rider, I got a little scared for my first ride on Cannibal. This ride is absolutely wild. Famously, Lagoon built it themselves, so it's not like a manufacturer that you've ever experienced before, and it doesn't have a seatbelt, so the only thing holding your life is Lagoon's very own lap bar. So this ride experience is absolutely incredible. So today we're gonna dive into what makes Cannibal so great and one of my favorite roller coasters of all time. This ride is in my top 10. I love Cannibal. So obviously this ride is really eye-catching, so it draws everyone. I went to Lagoon during what I hope was the hottest of Utah's summer. It was over 100 degrees for all 3 days of my trip to Lagoon, so the park was pretty dead because people were taking shelter, but you know, I had 3 days at Lagoon and I was gonna make the most of them. So I braved the heat and I took 20 laps on Cannibal over 3 days, including 10 laps on a single day. So I have a very good feeling for this ride experience. Front, middle, and back, there's only 3 rows, so there isn't much of a difference, but we're gonna break everything down. So in terms of presentation, I mean, the layout is pretty much like the keystone of the presentation, because the drop is just so intimidating. It's wild, and the elevator structure is just very eye-catching. It's an imposing structure in the skyline, and it's very intimidating. The name Cannibal is pretty cool, even if it is a little weird. It's pretty unique and kind of intimidating for a really intimidating ride, so I feel like it works out. Plus all those lion statues are pretty cool. When I visited Lagoon, they were assigning rows. They weren't too keen with row requests, but as I said, I rode it 20 times, so it didn't really matter. I got multiple laps in all 3 rows. They load 2 trains at once. If you load into the left side, you go straight into the ride and you have to wait after you experience the layout. If you get in the train on the right, you're gonna wait before your ride experience, and you get to wait less after your ride experience. When I was there, if you board in the front car on the left hand side, you go up the elevator on the right, and if you board in the train on the right hand side in the station, then you go up the elevator on the left hand side. This elevator is a lot like the one on Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld San Diego, which is the one that I'm most familiar with. That being said though, because Cannibal is just so much taller, the banking that you feel on the elevator in Journey to Atlantis is much more extreme because it has to get out of its way a lot quicker than the one on Cannibal. So you bank less when you're going up the elevator on Cannibal. I remember the first time I rode Journey to Atlantis, I was just absolutely shocked how far you lean to the right and to the left as the elevator gets out of the way of itself. Also, you go up the elevator on Cannibal very quickly, and it's just so tall. It's very intimidating. So when your train locks at the base of it, if you look straight up, you can see how high you're about to go, and it's borderline scary, dude. You go up there, it's just so tall and you go up there so fast, so it's pretty intimidating. Once you reach the top of the elevator, you're gonna park. I think they're supposed to have like one of those flap things that like opens up to reveal the view, but when I was there, it was just broad daylight, so when you're at the bottom, you could look up and see the top of the elevator where the light was shining in, and then when you got up there, you just saw the view of Utah. When you move forward, you have a great view. It is very intimidating. You realize how high up you are, and you just know that this drop is incredibly steep. So the first time I rode Cannibal, I was nervous, man. I gotta be real, but it's just crazy because like the Lagoon roll is very high off the ground, but when you're at the top of Cannibal, you're looking down on the Lagoon roll, and the Lagoon roll, it's like 100 feet below you, and of course the Lagoon roll itself is pretty tall, and you know you're not going from your height to the height of the Lagoon roll, you're going from your height to ground level, so that's just wild. The drop itself, I had mixed emotions with. I liked it more the more that I rode it. In the front row, it kind of leans you into your restraint as you crest over, and the view of how steep it is revealed to you, which is really cool. Leaning into the restraint doesn't hurt. but it's just interesting. You might get a little airtime. I noticed that Cannibal really did speed up the more that I rode it. That might be because of the extreme heat that I got to ride the attraction in, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a local to Lagoon, obviously. In the back, I thought it gave a little bit better airtime. Because you park at the top, you enter the drop with like no speed, so I feel like for that reason you don't get that much airtime. Like, and it's almost too steep to give airtime, you know? So it's really unique, but from an airtime lover's perspective, it was a little disappointing. But the drop is just so wild, it's so unique. I think it's the steepest drop I've ever ridden, so it's just absolutely wild, and I still like it even though it did not fully deliver on the airtime. Like, it's just kind of surreal. Like, I'm very used to hang time, and the first time I rode hang time, I was blown away going beyond vertical, and this goes beyond vertical for like a sustained amount of time, so it's just surreal. It's incredible. Just listening to people react to the drop, whether it was their first time riding the ride or like their 20th like me, you get some great reactions. Like, I've heard some amazing reactions on hang time at knots, so the ones on Cannibal are even more exaggerated. So it's incredible. It's an amazing moment. Before we continue, I want to talk about these restraints. They're a lot like the restraints on Wicked, but they're much more comfortable. I don't have a problem with the restraints on Wicked, as I discussed in my review video for that attraction. Like, the lap bars are comfortable. The problem with Wicked is the shin guards, and Cannibal shin guards are out of the way, so they're not going to come in contact with your legs, which is really, really nice, and that's not the case on Wicked. The lap bar will lock in place to give you enough room to feel the forces, and it's pretty comfortable. It's just much thicker than like normal clamshells that you'll find on B&Ms or hang time at knots, or like even mock clamshells. They're not really clamshells, those over the shoulder lap bars that mock rides is famous for. So it's comfortable and it's fun, and obviously going over the drop with no seatbelt is pretty intimidating. That adds to the fear factor. So the valley after the drop, it wasn't rough. It might be one of the shakier parts of the ride, but it's not that big a deal at all. I thought Cannibal was really smooth. It's very impressive how smooth this ride is considering its scale. I'm also used to hang time, and hang time is really inconsistent. Sometimes you'll get a really smooth ride on hang time and sometimes you won't at all, but Cannibal was very consistent over my 3-day visit. All 20 of the rides, very smooth, with one exception that we're going to dig into later. There's also a tunnel in this first valley going from the blinding summer sunlight to the darkness of the valley while you're like graying out from the intensity, and then back out into the blinding sunlight. That's like a lot to process. So I felt like the gray out during the first valley got more and more pronounced the more that I rode it. So as Cannibal sped up, the valley became more intense. And then after that, you fly up into the first inversion, which is this massive Immelman. So the profiling looks really unique. It looks crazy. It looks interesting. But on ride, it's just not. It's fine. It feels like a normal Immelman, like there's nothing wild about it. Like, the profiling is certainly unique. It does not have any unique forces. So that was a little disappointing, but it's still interesting, you know? It's not bad at all. It's just kind of basic, you know? Like, it doesn't feel incredibly different from a oversized Immelman that you might find on a ride like Valraven, you know? But after that, you're gonna dive into the biggest winner of Cannibal for me, which is the dive loop. It is the second inversion on the attraction. So if you know me, you know that I love my airtime, and I've raved about the dive loop on Trailblazer and Flight of Courage at Magic Mountain for giving airtime on an inversion, and I have found another inversion that gives airtime, and it is this dive loop on Cannibal. It is absolutely wild, and of course, unlike the RMC Raptors, Cannibal just has a lap bar, so that's wild. You get an incredible pop. If you look at the inversion, it's where the last support is before the track fully inverts. That's where you get thrown out of your seat. Front, middle, and back, you get an awesome pop of airtime, and it's incredible. Inversions that give airtime are wild. That's insane. You get thrown out of your seat, and then you get flipped upside down, jammed back into your seat as you roll out of the element. That's just wild. That's a lot to process, and it was something I didn't expect. I didn't hear that. I didn't know this element had airtime because not that many people talk about it. Like, I went back to a couple older reviews and I heard some people mention it. I feel like this needs to be hyped up more as one of the best parts of Cannibal. An inversion that gives airtime is insane. That's wild, and I love it. So the dive loop on Cannibal is absolutely spectacular. It has now entered the rankings as one of my favorite inversions of all time. Incredible. An inversion with airtime with just a lap bar, no seatbelt. That's bonkers, and Cannibal does it. After that though, we kind of go back down to earth with this airtime pop. It looks a lot like the step down on Hang Time, and that's a spectacular airtime moment on that attraction at Knott's. But this one on Cannibal was very, very disappointing, which is unfortunate. A lot of people hyped up this moment of Cannibal, and I thought it fell flat. I don't know if I got weird rides. I don't know if the heat just decided to not give airtime here, but I just thought it was really disappointing. Like, you still get a pop, but it's not powerful at all. It's not even half as strong as the airtime that you feel on the one on Hang Time. It is what it is, I guess. After that, you fly up into a cutback, just like the one on Hang Time. I don't think this is an inversion. It feels like an overbank. It rides like an overbank. It looks like an overbank. So it's an overbank. There's nothing special about it. Then after that, you're gonna curve up into the mid-course brake run. Cannibal does come to a smooth stop, which I really like. The Wild Mouse at this park stops on a dime, so you get punched in the gut. So I really appreciate that Cannibal and Wicked come to smooth stops, because they both have short trains, just like the Wild Mouse. So I'm glad that the high profile attractions are much more comfortable than the janky Wild Mouse. So usually slowing down so much on a mid-course brake run is really lame, but Cannibal takes full advantage because you roll into one of the wildest hang time moments I have ever experienced. It is called the Lagoon roll. So it's 2 barrel rolls back to back, but they're in different directions, and these are insane. And without a seatbelt, you're trusting your life with Lagoon's lap bar design, and it's a little freaky without a seatbelt, but it's awesome. I always had my hands up. The first roll is really cool because you don't have anything beneath you, so it's just a really, really cool visual being that high off the ground, having that insane hang time. Like, it's wild. Like, you feel like you're falling out, and you look down and you're like 100 feet off the ground or something. It's just wild. It's amazing. It's incredible. And then you roll over, and then Lagoon switches it up by adding a waterfall. Obviously the visual of the height is gone, but now you have the visual of the water, and it feels like you can reach out and touch it. And I tried multiple times, especially in the left seat. It felt like you could touch it. So it's just absolutely incredible. Both the rolls feel the same in terms of forces, but the difference in visuals really helped engage me. And then after that, Cannibal basically finishes things up with a figure 8. I didn't realize this just watching POVs and off-ride footage and reviews for years and years before riding the thing, but you gain so much speed during this figure 8 helix. Like, the Lagoon roll is pretty high off the ground, and then the helix is just, you gain speed through the whole thing because you're just getting closer and closer to the ground. You're going faster and faster before you slam into the brake run. So the intensity is building and building and building. So it's a really strong finale. During the first half of the helix, you're just sort of building up to that. The second half of the helix is where it really starts to shine, and I grayed out on this part of the helix on every single one of my rides. Some of them were really, really dark gray outs, like I might have almost blacked out. Part of that might have been because of the extreme heat, as I mentioned a couple times, so that's really wild. Another really cool element is that waterfall that I mentioned earlier. You go right by it, so during the helix, as you're graying out, you're gonna go right by the water, so you get misted. When I went there, I was in the burning sunlight and then into the shade. You get misted by water, and then you're back in the burning sunlight, and then you're back in the shade as you hit the brake run. So it's just like sensory overload as you're as you're getting crushed by positive g-forces. It's just absolutely incredible. So I loved Cannibal the more that I rode it. I just couldn't get enough of this ride. The diversity of forces is incredible on this ride. Like, it has everything that you could ever want from any roller coaster. The one department that it is kind of lacking in is airtime, because the step down was disappointing, and the drop is more focused on how insane the angle is instead of actual airtime. but that's a total nitpick. It's still absolutely wild, so there's absolutely nothing to complain about. Obviously you have hang time, and plus the air time with the inversion just blew me away so much that it completely offset all of those nitpicks for me. It's just incredible. The hang time during the Lagoon roll is some of the wildest hang time I've ever felt in my life, and the Immelman is still a solid inversion that's really fun. And of course, as I just talked about, the positive G-forces in the final helix are absolutely incredible. So this layout is one of my favorite layouts I have ever ridden. It's very impressive, incredible diversity of forces. It does everything very, very well. I love the dive loop, the drop, the Lagoon roll, the helix. There's just not much more you can ask from a roller coaster, you know? One slight nitpick that I kind of glossed over is that during that final helix, you do get a slight rattle, but it's really not that much to complain about. It is a really intense moment, so it kind of makes sense that there's a bit of a rattle, but the rest of the layout is really smooth, so it's a total nitpick. It's not that big a deal. It's an incredible attraction, so I walked away very, very impressed with Cannibal at Lagoon. So that's my opinion on this incredible attraction. What do you think about it? Please let me know in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. What's your favorite part of Cannibal? Please let me know. I'll catch you later.